So imagine these guys that have hundreds of millions of HEX, even billions, and they staked for 10 to 15 years. Okay. Now, a majority of everybody would think, okay, rationally, they would take some off the table or they would sell their HEX, right? They would end their stake and then sell. Majority of people probably think that way. Now, what if those people just restaked? You know, obviously they would have, at that point, you would imagine that smaller people would have given up T-shares and things like this. They would have even more control over the inflation of the system. If they stake for the same exact period of time or longer, well, I mean, you can't, if you stake longer than 10 years, it doesn't matter at that point. But,
well, one caveat, you'll get the emergency in stakes, more penalties over time for the next 5 years, for example. But yeah, you don't get paid anymore.
Yeah. You don't get diluted. Yeah. Which, I mean, theoretically, if you stake for 10 years and you had it like a extremely long time horizon and you stake for 10 years, now you could restake everything and probably get the same T-share because you're just that big, right? You have the 10% bonus, the bigger pays better, and then you do the 10-year stake again. Now you just have more of the inflation. So, if those people decided to do something like that, well,
you want to explain too why we got this question, why the 10-year stake is better than 15, and the caveat of you can, the penalties and stuff you may get if you do 15.
So it depends on your time horizon. So if you're wanting to just be in a 15-year stake and you want the T-shirt preservation, you can do that, right? But if you have a 10-year stake and then you stake it for another 10 years, you could possibly see where, as time goes on, obviously there's going to be less T-shares, right? And yours will probably be the same. When you restake, you'll probably have the same amount of T-shares because you'll have the same interest, or you have the principal and interest, and probably you will be the one setting the new T-share rate, which would mean you could break even with your T-shares. You could restake all of your HEX and get the same T-shares back, okay? If you were that big. Let's say, I think the bigger pays better bonus is 100 million HEX, but I forgot. I can't remember. But let's say it is, and you have 100 million HEX. Now, obviously, you're going to have way more than 100 million HEX at the end of 10 years. Now, if, as time goes on, you restake it near the end, or, at the end of your 10 years, and you restake it as soon as possible, and the T-share rate doesn't slip against you, and you get the same amount of T-shares back, you could theoretically have more control over the system as those other people are ending their stakes and they're not restaking for as long. You would then have more control than they would have because they gave up their time duration rather than you, and you staked earlier than they did. And so you got to see the T-share rate tick up, and now you're still holding longer than they are now, but you have the same T-shares. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a game you can play there. Obviously, they can restake. They can have the same T-share rate as well. There's different caveats for all this stuff, but it's just, I don't know, something we're discussing the other day. But
yeah, and again, the longer you stake is the more opportunity, and finish your stake, the more opportunity you have to collect emergency in stake, payouts and stuff too.
Of
so
course.
That's like, even Richard talked about this on stream of like, oh yeah, he was like, yeah, I always thought, why would anyone do over 10 years? But then somebody brought up the point of 15 years, you're staking longer, you're getting those extra payouts, when and if they happen.
Yeah. And I'll be real with you, the payouts or the emergency end stakes, that's probably lucrative, but I think the real value thing here is the actual T-shares themselves, because they dwindle away as time goes on, and they start to dwindle away much faster as time goes on. And you could probably argue and say maybe the time horizon for Bitcoin. This happened in the conversation I had on Wednesday as well. Like, Okay, so let's look at Bitcoin, right? It's been what, 15 years now, or almost 15 years, and the first 10 was probably the best gains that it's had, right? And then these last 5 years, it's been pretty abysmal gains, right? So you could argue that maybe there is a cyclical cycle here, a much bigger cycle within the 4-year cycles or whatever. You could probably argue, okay, these last 5 years of Bitcoin have been shit gains because it's just part of the cycle. Maybe that'll look like that in HEX, perhaps, and who's to say that the next 10 years for Bitcoin might have better performance than it did for the last 5 years that we've had for Bitcoin, or crypto in general. And so
in 10 years, maybe T-share will mean 1,000 share instead of trillion share.
Sure, yeah, you could always redefine T-share into a B share, or a T share again,
a T-share, right? A TT share.
So, exactly, yeah, a lowercase T share, right?
Yes, yeah, there we go.